All my life I was second. My sister was perfect, and my family let her steal everything from me. I hesitated for a long time before writing this story. Partly out of shame, because for years I was taught that the problem was me. Partly out of fear, because even now, it feels like I might be exaggerating. But the older I get, the clearer it becomes, this wasn't imagined. It was systemic discrimination. From childhood. Day after day. I have an older sister. Let's call her Alina. The age difference between us is a little over a year. We grew up in the same house, in the same family, with the same parents. But our lives were completely different. From early childhood, there was an unspoken rule. Alina was always right. I was always guilty. These weren't small things or a child's imagination. It was obvious even to outsiders. If Alina said I had done something, I was punished immediately. If I accused Alina, I wasn't believed, even when there was proof. I remember one time she broke my mother's favorite vase. I saw it with my own eyes. When my mom walked into the room, Alina said, "It was her." I was punished. Alina was told, "It's okay, sweetheart, you didn't mean to." This repeated for years. Even my birthday was about her. My birthday cake was always the flavor she liked. Even if I hated it. Her cake was always exactly what she wanted. Gifts? Hers were more expensive. Mine were fine too, don't exaggerate. We went wherever she wanted. Even if it was my celebration. Even if it was my achievement. My parents loved to say, "Don't be selfish. Think about your sister." No one ever told her to think about me. She grew up spoiled, and more cruel every year. At first, Alina mostly ignored me. I was nothing to her. An accessory. Furniture. But something changed during our teenage years. I don't know what was the cause and what was the result. But she started having problems at school. She lost her friends. We attended the same school, and I saw it every day. She used to always walk around with a group. Then alone. My parents never talked about it. They continued bragging about her achievements and ignoring her problems. Meanwhile, my flaws were constantly used as material for jokes, criticism, and educational talks. I, on the other hand, had friends. I was popular. And that's when Alina realized I was a threat. The ignoring stopped. The humiliation began. She turned my life into hell. She started blaming me for everything. For things I didn't do. For things I couldn't have done. For anything that benefited her. She blamed my friends. And my parents always believed her. I was forbidden from socializing with anyone. They said, "They're bad people, your sister says so. Why are you trying to leave us? Why can't you be like Alina and stay with the family?" In reality, I was forbidden from having friends because she didn't have any. The only thing that saved me from complete isolation was my relatives. Most of them lived in the same city. I often spent time with my cousins, despite the age difference. One day they invited me to go out with them. I replied sadly, "I'm not allowed." They asked, "Why?" And I, as a child, answered honestly, "I'm not allowed to have friends because my sister doesn't have any." That sentence reached the adults. And judging by what followed, my parents were torn apart over it. After that, I was given a bit of freedom. And Alina changed schools. She started destroying everything that made me happy. After Alina transferred to another school, I naively thought things would get easier. Physically, she was less present in my life, but her power over my life only grew. She wasn't there every day anymore, but now she could invent stories. And my parents listened only to her. Friends were forbidden again now. Officially. If someone called me, Alina said they're a bad influence. If I wanted to go somewhere, "Why are you trying to run away from home?" The phrase I heard most often. "Why can't you be like your sister?" No one ever asked what it was like to be me. I stopped bringing people home. Because my parents acted cold and humiliating toward guests. Or Alina accused them of stealing something. And of course, she was believed. My first boyfriend, and my first real hatred. When I got my first boyfriend, I didn't want to bring him home. I knew how it would end. But my parents insisted. We eventually broke up. One day, he came to see me, angry, shaken, confused. He said, "Your sister flirted with me." According to him, she approached him in revealing clothes, batted her eyelashes, complained about how bad I was and how much better she was. He was so upset that he came specifically to tell me. Of course, Alina told my parents a different story. That he tried to flirt with her, and she nobly rejected him because, how could she do that to me? Guess who they believed? My parents called him disgusting. And me, a naive fool. I was broken. And for the first time, I truly hated my sister. It happened again and again. Second boyfriend. Same story. He rejected her. She said he harassed her. I tried to point out the pattern. I said, "This isn't the first time." They replied, "That means you don't know how to choose decent men." To them, she was always the victim. And I was always the problem. The reputation she ruined. In my final school years, I was labeled easy. Not because I was, but because I refused relationships while allowing kissing. The label stuck. Thankfully, it never reached my sister or parents. Because if it had, I'm afraid to imagine what would have happened. Double standards everywhere. Over the years, Alina brought home exactly one boyfriend. My parents constantly said, "Look how great he is. Why can't you find someone like that?" When he disappeared from her life, he instantly became a vile bastard who used her. My life was a constant effort to prove that I was worse. She got more money, more freedom, more trust. When I pointed it out, they said, "She's older." When I reached her age, they said they never said that. Or that I couldn't be trusted. And as proof, once again, my sister's words. College, final proof that I was never meant to matter. When Alina was accepted to college, it wasn't prestigious. No scholarship. Bad grades. My parents promised to pay for everything. I knew her grades were weak. When she got a B, it was a celebration. When I got top grades, they said, "You always do well, what's there to celebrate?" When it was my turn to apply, my mom said, "We don't have money for you. You should just start working." She, generously, allowed me to take out a loan. But added, "We'll still decide whether college is even worth it for you." At that moment, I understood. I never had a chance. I became their worst nightmare without raising my voice. I was preparing to escape while they thought they had broken me. After that conversation with my mom about college, I stopped arguing. I didn't cry. I didn't explain. I just said, "Okay, I understand." And they thought they had won. They believed I had accepted the role of the second daughter, the one who would never achieve anything without their permission. In reality, I started preparing silently. I barely left the house. Not because I didn't want to, but because it was my only way out. While Alina partied, complained, and spent my parents' money, I studied late into the night, prepared for exams, searched for scholarships, studied because I knew this was my only chance at freedom. I had no illusions. I knew they would never pay for my education. The day I broke their script, I got accepted, tuition free, with a full scholarship. Not to an elite university. Not to medicine or law. But to a solid college, a decent program. Without a single cent from them. I knew if I told them at home, they would try to ruin everything. So I made a move they didn't expect. I posted the news on social media first, thanking my parents for their support and belief in me. Yes, it was hypocritical. But it was protection. Now, if they tried to stop me, they would have to explain to relatives why they were proud of their daughter online. but destroying her life in reality. At first, they were even proud. They bragged. Then Alina talked to them. And everything changed. When my sister realized she was losing, they started saying, "Are you sure you can handle it? Alina is struggling in college, and she's smarter than you. It will be even worse for you." I didn't give up. They were angry. But they couldn't stop me. College became my first breath of air. I was happy. For the first time in my life. My sister failed, and came back. Alina didn't finish college. I know, because otherwise they would have shouted it from every rooftop. She came back home. No job. No bills. No responsibility. "That's different," my parents said. She got a job with my mom, through connections. And once again, it was presented as an achievement. I was already living a separate life. The person who didn't let them break me again. That's when I met my husband. And he was my complete opposite. I'm soft. I overthink. I replay conversations in my head at night. He acts. He doesn't forgive betrayal. He doesn't forget humiliation. And when someone crosses a line, he always responds. When I told him about my family, he didn't say, "Maybe you're exaggerating." He said, "They'll try again. And we need to be ready." When they found out about the wedding, we decided not to have a lavish ceremony. Not much money. We'd rather spend it on a honeymoon in Europe. But we decided to have the wedding in my hometown. For the relatives. That's when my parents demanded to meet my fiancé. I agreed. On the condition that they wouldn't be alone with him. My husband looked like I had cancelled Christmas. He had been waiting for this moment. He even bought a recorder. And said, "If they pull something, we'll have proof." He went to meet them alone. And came back, happy. "You won't believe what he said." And that's when I realized. They decided that even my wedding had to be about Alina. The day they tried to steal my wedding, and lost everything. When my husband returned from that introductory meeting, he looked like he had just watched an absurd horror movie. "They want to pay for the wedding," he said. "But under one condition." I already knew. "Your sister has to walk down the aisle first. In a wedding dress. With photos, cake, everything. At your wedding." They explained it as if they were doing us a favor. That it's wrong for the younger sister to get married first. And if Alina doesn't have a fiancé, she should at least experience the moment. At my ceremony, my husband said he only held back because he wanted to hear everything. We didn't say no. We said yes. We could have said no. Started a fight. Cut them out of our lives. But my husband paused. And smiled. What if we say yes? That's when we stopped planning a wedding. And started planning a verdict. Months when they thought they controlled us. My husband went back to my parents and said, "She won't be thrilled, but if everything is done right, she'll accept it. She hates conflict." It was the perfect lie. My parents believed it. My sister was ecstatic. She literally jumped with joy. Months of planning followed, where they thought they were manipulating me, while actually financing their own humiliation. Every detail went like this. "Here's the cheaper option. Oh, that's a shame, but we don't want to abuse your kindness." And then Alina would throw a tantrum. "I want the best. She deserves worse." And my parents paid. For flowers. For the photographer. For decor. For food. They thought they were buying control. In reality, they were paying for security. The wedding day. Their plan was simple. Everyone sits. I'm traditionally late. Alina enters first, in a wedding dress. I find out when it's already too late. But they didn't know one thing. We had a guest list. And a guard. His instruction was simple. Let everyone in. Except one person. The moment of truth. When the guests were seated. When the music started. When my father stood at the aisle. The doors opened. And it was me. My father's face went white. His phone rang. It was Alina. He looked at me and walked away. The room started whispering. My friend loudly asked, "What happened?" With tears in my eyes, I said, "He said it wasn't supposed to be me." It hurt, because part of me still hoped it wasn't true. What happened to my sister? She arrived in a wedding dress. The guard told her she had the wrong venue, because the bride was already inside. She screamed, collapsed on the floor, called the police. My father threatened. My mother cried. But they had no proof. No messages. No recordings. No yes from my husband. Only their words. When the truth became public, guests went outside to see what was happening. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look crazy. They looked cruel, manipulative, disgusting. They were asked to leave. After the wedding, my sister sent me a message, full of hatred and accusations. My husband took screenshots and sent them to the family group chat. After that, silence. What I learned. I didn't get revenge. I protected myself. And for the first time in my life, they didn't ruin my celebration. They didn't steal my joy. They didn't silence me. They lost publicly. And permanently. I got married. I went on my honeymoon. I lived my life. And they stayed with their lies. And you know what? This is the best ending I could have imagined. Update 1. After the wedding, they tried to regain control, but something finally broke. After the wedding, I thought it was over. That public humiliation, witnesses, and silence in the family chat were the end. I was wrong. It turned out that for people who have lived on control their entire lives, losing isn't the end. It's a challenge. The first calls and sudden concern. A few days after the wedding, while we were still on our honeymoon, the calls started. First, from my mother. Her voice was different. Soft. Broken. Almost caring. "We're just worried. You understand, things just happened. Let's not hold grudges, we're family." No apology. No. We were wrong. Just the classic, let's pretend nothing happened. I didn't answer. Then my father joined in. He didn't call. He wrote long messages about shame in front of relatives. "You destroyed the family. You let your husband humiliate us." Not a word about Alina. Not a word about the wedding dress. Not a word about the plan. In their version, I was guilty again. For the first time in my life, I didn't justify myself. I simply didn't respond. My sister lost control. Alina didn't try to be polite. She sent me a massive message, a mix of hysteria, threats, and insults. She accused me of destroying her life, stealing her chance, turning my husband against the family. And one sentence that put everything in place. "You were always nobody, you just got lucky with your husband." I read it several times. And suddenly, I felt nothing. No pain. No anger. No urge to prove anything. Just exhaustion. What my husband did. I wanted to block them all. But my husband stopped me. "Wait. This isn't over. Let them show who they really are." He took screenshots of all messages, saved the voice notes, logged the calls, and without a single comment, sent everything to the family group chat. No explanations. No emotions. Just facts. The family's reaction. Then something happened that I didn't expect. The same relatives who had always stayed silent started writing to me. "We didn't know it was this bad. Sorry we didn't intervene. You didn't deserve this." People started speaking openly about Alina. About my parents, quietly, but honestly. And for the first time in my life, the story was told not by her. Not by them. But by facts. What changed in me? I used to think revenge had to be loud. Shouting. Humiliation. Drama. In reality, my revenge looked different. I didn't argue. Didn't prove I was right. Didn't ask for love. I simply stepped out of the game. And do you know what's scariest for people like them? When you stop reacting. Where we are now. We live separately. Contact is minimal. Only through text, if at all. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe they'll try again. Maybe they won't. But for the first time in my life, I'm not living in anticipation of the next blow. I live my life. With someone who chose my side. Without needing to prove that I deserve to exist. If something else happens, I'll write. But even if this is the end, I'm no longer. Second. Update 2. I'm no longer their daughter, and for the first time, that sounds like freedom. Several months have passed since the wedding and the first update. I didn't write for a long time because nothing dramatic happened. And that's the main change. A silence I never had before. Before, my life was constant tension. Calls. Messages. Passive aggression. Accusations. We're just worried. Now silence. Not sharp. Not demonstrative. But the kind of silence that feels like I disappeared from their inner world. And it felt strange. The first few weeks, I caught myself waiting. Something will happen any second. There will be another scandal. Someone will write. But nothing happened. They didn't change, they just lost interest. Eventually it hit me. They didn't realize their guilt. They didn't wake up. They simply realized they no longer had power. I stopped reacting. Stopped justifying myself. Stopped explaining. Stopped playing the role of the guilty one. And without that, they had nothing to work with. The last attempt. The only thing that happened was a message from my mother. Short. Cold. Almost official. Your father and I think it would be better to take a pause in communication. It will be calmer for everyone. I read it several times. Once, words like that would have destroyed me. Made me cry. Beg. Explain. This time, I felt relief. I replied. Okay. Take care. And I meant it. Alina disappeared from my life. I know nothing about my sister anymore. And for the first time, I don't care. I don't look for information. I don't ask relatives. I don't analyze. She is no longer the measure of my worth. And not my enemy. She's just a person I have no connection with. What changed in me? I started noticing things that used to be impossible. I don't tense up when the phone rings. I don't replay conversations in my head at night. I don't prepare to defend myself for no reason. For the first time, I live without an inner defense attorney. My husband once said, "You've become quieter, but stronger." And I realized he was right. What I learned. Love doesn't look like constant comparison. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fighting for your place. Family isn't those who have automatic access to you. It's those who don't destroy your reality. If you recognize yourself in this story, you are not obligated to prove that you deserve basic decency. Wait for someone to change. Stay where you are diminished. Sometimes the bravest decision is simply to leave. Without a scandal. Without explanations. Without a final word. Final. I didn't win. I didn't take revenge. I didn't prove anything. I simply stopped being convenient. And that was enough for everything to end. It's not a loud ending. But it's mine.